What is up, everybody? My name is Brandon, and we are back for part 3 in the marching band fundamental series, what is better becoming known as the Fast Hands for Life Gospel. This part is going to cover stroke types, stick heights, and dynamics. And as I was gathering my thoughts on what I wanted to say for this episode, I kind of came to realize that there's actually quite a bit more and a couple little philosophical things that I wanted to talk about in this series before we kind of went into, okay, this is an upstroke, this is a downstroke, whatever. So why don't you join me over here for a second, and we're just gonna rock talk for a minute about dynamics and stick heights. All right, so this is going to be a bit of a long way of kind of just saying one thing, but there's a bit of a funny story in there, so that's why I'm gonna say it. Okay, so stick heights are a bit of an abstract concept. What do I mean by that? So stick heights are measured in inches, right? So we typically say, use this number of inches to play this volume on stick heights. But our view of inches is a bit skewed as it relates to drumline. So typically what we say is like piano is 3 inches, mezzo forte is 6 inches, forte is 9 inches, and fortissimo is 12 inches. Anything beyond that, right, then the stick is going vertical, and that's what we reserve for the like 15-inch stroke height for fortissimo notes or sforzando notes. And so what I'm doing here is playing mezzo forte stick heights, right? This is just kind of a nice, what looks like 6-inch stroke. But then when I put the ruler in, you can see it's actually closer to being like 9 to 12-inch strokes. So my stick heights are a lot higher than what we prescribe, right? We say 3-inch, 6-inch, 9-inch, and so on. But what we really mean is it's more like 6-inch for mezzo piano. Truly, it would be like 12 inches for mezzo forte, and so on and so forth. And so why I'm sharing this is because I was that stupid kid in my room, and I really thought I was doing something by standing there with a ruler and checking on the side of the ruler with my drumstick, how tall is this stick height? And I really thought that because I didn't have a great percussion music education, right? There were great band directors where I went to school, and I did have a couple drum set lessons with a really awesome drum set player in my area. But beyond that, I didn't really have much of a music education. So if there is just like one person out there who was like me and just takes this a little bit too seriously, and just imagine like little 14-year-old me in my room with a ruler and a drumstick trying to measure that out. It's a waste of time. It's not really what we mean when we say play this inch stroke, and I'm sure nobody is really gonna take that as literally as I did. I'm probably like the weird case study on using your time as inefficiently as possible. But if this saves one person like 3 hours of doing whatever that was, then it's worth saying, and it's worth putting in this video. So to that end, saying our stick heights in inches is probably not going to change, and it's probably going to remain that way for the next century. Until there's a better way that really just sweeps everybody off their feet. But if you don't like thinking of it in inches, what we can think of is more like percentages, right? So like 25% of your full stroke is piano, 50% of your full stroke is mezzo forte, 75% is forte, and 100% is fortissimo. Going beyond 100, give it 110% is fortissimo or sforzando. Oh my God, oh, it's so itchy. Bruh, dry skin be like, Arby's. So yeah, hopefully this helps, and now let's go ahead and get into an actually helpful part of the video. Okay, so I'm very happy that we were able to share that incredibly embarrassing moment together. Let's move on now to talking about accents. So accents as they relate to dynamics and stick heights is again a bit of an abstract thing. Typically what we want to think about when we are considering accents in rudimental playing is to add 2 levels to the dynamic that we're playing. Typically what we want to think of in rudimental playing is that if we've got an accented note, we'll add 2 dynamic levels to whatever we're playing. So if we see an accented mezzo forte note, we'll go up to forte and then up to fortissimo. If we see an accented mezzo piano note, we'll go up mezzo forte up to forte. And if we see an accented piano note, we'll come up mezzo piano up to mezzo forte. Again, since this is a bit of an abstract sort of thing, you might find varying ways to think about this. In my experience, this just makes sense and work with. In my In my experience, this just kind of makes sense and works with the way that I think about things. I don't want to assert that that's the only way to think about accents and that that's the way accents work in every single scenario, because of course we also have housetop accents. We have those marcato accents. We have half accents or weighted notes. And so where do those fit into the equation? Of course, it's going to be sort of a case by case thing. But in general, I find that thinking about accents in that way is a really efficient way to sort of just approach it. And then you can adjust from there as you see musically fit. Okay, moving on to stroke types now. So stroke types are basically how we make the connection between our different stick heights. And again, our stick heights are either accent, tap, or grace note stick heights. And going in between those, the way that we transfer from one stick height to the next is what I'm referring to as a stroke type. In general, there are going to be 4 different stroke types. 2 of them are going to remain the same height and 2 of them are going to change height. Let's talk about those now, and then this will kind of make more sense as we go along. So we've got accent to accent, accent to tap, tap to tap, and tap to accent. We'll get more into applying these when we get into the next section, which is going to be the stroke prep section. But for right now, I just kind of want to learn the fundamentals and the mechanics and how they relate to our playing so that we can apply those without thinking so hard about them in the next section. So let's go ahead and grab a pair of sticks and talk a little bit more about these. Alrighty, we've got sticks in hand here. Let's go ahead and start going over some of these stroke types. So let's start with one of the easier stroke types to figure out. And this is going to be the tap to tap stroke type. Okay, so we're starting with a tap and we are setting up for a tap. And you can see with this, really all we're doing is just playing 2 taps in a row. This isn't any sort of revolutionary idea. This is just what we would play if we were going to play 2 unaltered, like mezzo forte notes, for example. But what it starts getting you to do is thinking about the relationship and sort of previewing what the next note is going to do. And we'll get into that more in a little bit here. Okay, the next stroke type, let's try accent to accent stroke type. So we play an accent, and then we follow it up with another accent. So you can see I'm just letting the stick fully rebound and just go all the way back into my hand. All right, next what we're going to do, this is where the stroke prep philosophy kind of comes into play here. So we're going to work on what's known as an upstroke or an accent to tap stroke. So what we're going to do is think of this in groups of 2s. I don't want you to just play tap accent, tap accent, tap accent, tap accent, tap, or anything like that over and over again. What we want to do is think of these as one note in relation to the next note. Okay, so just take this in groups of 2s, and what we're going to do is play a tap and then let it fully rebound or upstroke into an accent stroke. And then don't worry so much about what the stroke type is going to be following that, because it's unrelated to what we're doing here. We don't know what's coming after. We're just playing a tap set up for an accent following that. And then finally, the last type that we're going to talk about is a downstroke, or what's called, and Henry, come here. And lastly, what we're going to do here is play a downstroke, and this will be accomplished by playing an accent down to a tap. This is definitely the most mechanically demanding and technical of all of the stroke types that we're going to do here. So let's take a closer look at the downstroke. Okay, the downstroke. Now stuff is starting to get real. And the downstroke is a bit of a special case because it not only functions as a note-to-note transition, but it also functions a little bit aesthetically as well. And we will certainly get into that later when we start talking about visual things and what we want to consider that we're conveying as a drum line. But for right now, just understand that we're not always going to go from a note to note basis, and that there are times where we're just going to look at a downstroke on its own and it's not really going to lead to anything. Okay, so the downstroke, here we go. I'm just going to demonstrate it a little bit and then we'll kind of talk about the mechanics of how we achieve this stroke type. So here is going to be a downstroke. Okay, so you can see that truly all that a downstroke is just not allowing the stick to come back. It's going to be from an accent or even a tap position, and simply all we're doing is not allowing the stroke to rebound. or we're going to have this controlled rebound, as we call it. Okay, so this can be from any stick height, really, just as long as we're not letting this happen, right? And it's got to be quick as well, otherwise the effect is kind of ruined as it relates visually, and then mechanically and technically as it relates to our playing, the dynamic effect will be ruined as well if we don't catch it pretty much as quickly as we can. Okay, so how do we achieve the downstroke? Really, a lot of the downstroke comes from the finger control. So if you remember back to our body awareness, this is going to be that squeeze motion that we talked about. And what happens is as the stick is trying to bounce back up, okay, so this is going to be like in super slow motion. So as the stick is trying to bounce back up, what we're going to do is just grab it with our hands. Okay, so in slow motion, I'll try to demonstrate here what that's going to look like. So the stick is coming down. It wants to bounce back up, but we're going to give it with our fingers. We're just going to squeeze it ever so slightly. And by squeezing it, that's going to stop the stick from rebounding. So it'll look like this. We have down, 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 and then we hit, it bounces back up, except no, it doesn't because we squeeze, right? Kind of looks like that. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And the squeeze almost starts before the stroke actually makes contact with the surface that you're playing on. So you can almost think of it like the fingers are sort of propelling it, giving it that last little bit of propulsion, but also stopping it from rebounding. And now I'll just kind of walk around the pad here and just play the downstroke from some different perspectives here.
I don't really feel like moving me tripod, so I'm just gonna sit on the floor.
So hopefully this helps give you a better understanding of how we deal with dynamics, how we deal with accents, and some of these different stroke types. The next part is going to delve further into this subject with stroke preps and how those relate into some real world music. But I just wanted to basically kind of give you the mechanical and sort of, I guess, philosophical understanding of how we think about dynamics and accents in drumline. And yeah, I think that's all. So I will see you in the next part. Thank you. Bye.